The legendarium that Tolkien created is full of epic battles, fantasy monsters, and world-shaping events. Fans of the Peter Jackson adaptations would know that epic is synonymous with those movies as well. Now, I love the cinema and the power of those scenes in the films as well as the epic moments in the books, but today's video isn't about any of those. Today's video is about a simple conversation between two old men that just so happens to be my favorite scene in The Lord of the Rings. Now, while you're watching this video, you might notice some shots intercut throughout. Those are just fun things that I filmed. I got a new camera for this channel and to work on these videos, so they're not perfect. They don't always fit great, but I want to add some of that, exploring and trying out and testing with the camera, so bear with me on those. I know that quick cuts are more typical for YouTube and modern media today. I'm not a great editor yet, and I think it's nice in a story like The Lord of the Rings to slow down a little bit, so enjoy those throughout the video, and let's begin. Now, might it be a little bit of YouTube hyperbole to consider this my favorite scene? Yes, but if it gets views, it gets views. It is also legitimately the scene that I go back and reread the most out of the books. So it comes in the chapter Minas Tirith, the first chapter of Book 5, or the start of Return of the King. It's a very confusing structure where it was originally supposed to be one book with many sub-books that became 3 books with many sub-books. So Return of the King, start of the story. So as a little background for those who aren't as familiar, by this point the Fellowship has long since split. The Rohirrim have met the armies of Saruman and withstood them at Helm's Deep and on the plains. The Ents, together with Merry and Pippin, have overthrown Orthanc, and the evil wizard Saruman is trapped inside. Grima Wormtongue, bad guy, has thrown a strange orb down from the top of the tower. Pippin looks into it and gains insight into the plans of the enemy, and it's also feared he's now become a target of Sauron, the real bad. So Sauron knows that he exists and has some idea about him, but doesn't know the truth about the ring. So Gandalf and Pippin go together with great haste to Minas Tirith, the city of kings and of Gondor. So the throne has been vacant for an age. Stewards reign in the city. Pippin and Gandalf meet with the current steward, Denethor, Lord of Gondor, in hopes of moving him to action against the true enemy in the east, Sauron. Pippin immediately swears fealty, and then the scene occurs. So that's kind of the background details. It's nothing unfamiliar to the majority of you, but the important setup here is that they're entering a city of forgotten kings who have not seen a ruler in age. That is the context for this meeting between Gandalf and Denethor, the scene that I love the most from Lord of the Rings, and I'll read it to you now. For I have not ridden hither from Isengard 150 leagues with the speed of wind, only to bring you one small warrior, however courteous. Is it not to you that Theoden has fought a great battle, and that Isengard is overthrown, and that I have broken the staff of Saruman? It is much to me, but I know already sufficient of these deeds for my own counsel against the menace of the East. He turned his dark eyes on Gandalf, and now Pippin saw a likeness between the two, and he felt the strain between them, almost as if he saw a line of smoldering fire drawn from eye to eye that might suddenly burst into flame. Denethor looked indeed much more like a great wizard than Gandalf did, more kingly, beautiful, and powerful, and older. Yet, by a sense other than sight, Pippin perceived that Gandalf had the greater power, and the deeper wisdom, and the majesty that was veiled. And he was older. Far older. How much older? He wondered. And then he thought how odd it was that he had never thought about it before. Treebeard had said something about wizards, but even then he had not thought of Gandalf as one of them. What was Gandalf? In what far time and place did he come into the world, and when would he leave it? And then his musings broke off, and he saw that Denethor and Gandalf still looked each other in the eye, as if reading the other's mind. But it was Denethor who first withdrew his gaze. Yes, he said, for though the stones be lost, they say, still the lords of Gondor have keener sight than lesser men, and many messages come to them. But sit now. Now, having read the scene for you guys, I'm going to go over a few of the things that I really like and admire about this scene, and maybe some of why it really has stuck out to me ever since my first reading of it. The first thing is it's really the first scene that hints at the deeper lore. There's references throughout. There's the Lay of Luthien in the Fellowship of the Ring. There's the story of the Ents and the ancient nature of the Tower of Saruman, Orthanc. But this is the first one where, to me, you have that moment with Pippin. You have this realization that Gandalf, the Grey Pilgrim, this wanderer who's been with you, you thought died and has returned, is more than what you understand. You see a beauty and a majesty to that it just, the fact that Tolkien conveyed such power behind it without having to explain anything. Tolkien is always the quintessential example of a soft magic system, or a magic system that doesn't have hard rules and strict physics attached to it, which are my personal favorite. I know the trend has been otherwise lately, but that's personally my favorite, and this is the most excellent example of it, where you have this sense of power that goes beyond what a character can understand, so they don't try to. Pippin wonders, but he doesn't get an answer. Certainly not missing. He's not told, oh yeah, he's one of the Ainur, and he came in this era, in this spot, and he did these travels. Tolkien probably had those ideas in his mind roughly, and later wrote them down, but it's not what matters here. What matters here is the line that really sticks out to me: a majesty that was veiled. This idea that Gandalf is just being seen, even as Gandalf the White, right? Because he is, at this point, a returned wizard. He's broken the staff of Saruman and has taken up that mantle to be who and what Saruman should have been. But even still, his power is veiled. Even in this form, his power is veiled. There's just something so much deeper going on in this section. There's something so much deeper to Gandalf. And it's just kind of a really interesting hint that comes before the real final battle to know the powers that are at play here and the way that they've chosen to interact with the world of our characters. And not only is this done very well for Gandalf, but it's done very well and intentionally in comparison to Denethor, who is described as more kingly, more wizard-like in how Pippin perceives a wizard or a king to look, or how they should look. There's this conflict between the worldly powers that are in a way prideful, and I'll talk more about how he makes that connection in a moment, but how worldly powers are more prideful, and yet in Gandalf there's this humility, there's this hiding of who and what you are that reveals a deeper integrity and a deeper strength. Now this does offer some challenge to Denethor, and it really sets up what I consider to be a battle between these two men. Now you get it previously a little bit in the Two Towers, where Saruman and Gandalf have their debate, and you really see the importance of voice in these texts about what you say and the power behind words. You see it in the warnings that Gandalf gives to the company as they ride up to Saruman, and even as it starts to work, as the voice of the wizard Saruman starts to sway the people in the company to maybe he's not so bad, But ultimately his staff is broken. The voice of Gandalf overpowers and expels the darkness of Saruman. It breaks the spell, literally. Something similar is happening here, but it's not done with words. It's described as a likeness. The first thing that Pippin notices is that there's some similarity between the ideas in his head of Denethor and Gandalf. And then there's a strain. Their eyes connect, and it says their eyes strain in the way they look into one another. And Pippin is seeing this from the outside, but you get the sense that Denethor and Gandalf are doing some sort of battle, that this is how the wise fight, that they are on the verge of bursting into flame from just the line of their vision. There's an intensity to that. There's a sense of warfare or of battle in that metaphor. And finally, when Denethor looks away first, there's a sense of submissiveness in that. Not only in ideas we have or understandings we have about the natural world and animals, but just as humans, you've had the experience, I'm sure, of making eye contact and maybe struggling to keep it, or maybe making eye contact when you feel like you should, or you've been told you should and you don't want to, and you become aware of it, and it becomes more uncomfortable, and you just want to look away. Now, of course, it differs in different scenarios and different situations. I may have just won that staring match. You may not have realized we were having one. Either way, you could have paused the video and I could have been staring forever. So I'll take that as a win. In this case, though, what Denethor is acknowledging is that Gandalf has seen something that he can't confront, right? That's what Tolkien is conveying here. That later, when Denethor says, "Though the stones be lost," hold on, let me get the exact quote for you. "Yea," he said, "for though the stones be lost, they say, still the lords of Gondor have keener sight than lesser men, and many messages come to them." So that little sentence, that little section does a lot, because first off, we find out later that Denethor is lying. I mean, the stones have been lost, and men do say that, so maybe he's not lying, but he's certainly not sharing everything he has to share with Gandalf. He's been using the stone, and he's been deeply affected by it. Now, not in the way that Sauron has invaded his mind or memory, because he is stronger than that, but he's fallen into a sense of despair, a sense of loss. There's something that's gone awry in his conception of the world. He can only see the shadow. He can only see the darkness. So when Gandalf comes offering this vision of hope, that's what's competing here. It's the complacency of we cannot do anything. It's the apathy, really, of we can't do anything. It's too powerful of an evil, versus we have to try. Right? And that's what Gandalf is coming to present. He's coming at this last hour to say, here's what we need to do and how. Now you'll notice the final bit of that little section is that the eyes of men of Gondor have keener sight than that of lesser men. And later it says Gandalf recognizes there is still some of the blood of Westerness in Denethor. He's not a weak man, and he's not a foolish man, but he has been tricked. And the greatest failure he has is foregoing hope. So at this point in the story, with Pippin, we're kind of experiencing this sense of hopelessness. But as we do, through Gandalf and through this interaction, we start to understand how dangerous that can be. We start to understand what apathy can lead you to. Because Denethor is not an evil man, but he's a man who has allowed evil in. And because of that, he becomes a danger to himself and to his city, as well as to his son. Now, another important parallel that really strikes me at this time, some of the important themes that I think really come through in the writing of this, is the humility and pride between Gandalf and Denethor, respectively. Well, it's not the most opaque of metaphors. For as much as Tolkien hated the idea of writing allegories, he did use a lot of fairly direct language. And in this case, Denethor is described as what we would think of as a king or a hero or a man of splendor. And Gandalf, even though he is in his aggrandized form as the White Wizard, is much more humble. He's older, and he has the wearied kind of sense of a pilgrim. And yet in that humility he has a greater power, because the power that he still holds is hope. So you get something about the failure of worldly wisdom and the importance of humility, and the idea that you have to keep on the journey, and that you have to trust that something will work, or you have to at least do what you're able to do. It's no secret that Tolkien was a religious man, and of course this relates to themes found throughout the Christian faith, in the Christian Bible, the church fathers, the saints. And I think it's really striking for me personally, if we're talking about why I enjoy this scene and what it means to me, that I'm making this video the week of the publican and the Pharisee in the Orthodox Church, where we talk about this story from the Bible where the Pharisee justifies himself before men and the publican justifies himself before God. It's a really striking scene, and I think it has a lot of wisdom, regardless of your worldviews or tradition. I highly recommend reading it. And if you're interested, it's Luke chapter 18, 9 through 14. But regardless of that, these ideas influenced Tolkien, and part of his journey with the characters is similar to a Christian's journey through Lent. So finding these parallels are relevant to understanding the story that he was trying to tell. And then, of course, we can get into the death of the author and postmodernism and, critique and how we take a story once it's out of the author's hands and into ours. But for me, it's helped remind me in this week that finding humility is never about placing yourself last. It's about placing others first. But to me, in this period of preparation for what is a great journey for me, what is a difficult journey, I'm reminded that there's always hope. That what you're called to do in every moment, whoever you are or wherever you are, is to maintain that hope and that belief in goodness, and to carry it with you. And I could go on and on about the works of Tolkien and why I think they matter, and what they offer us, but one of the most striking and clear benefits to these books is just the way that it can inspire hope. So whether you go to watch the movie this week, or maybe you pick up the books or listen to them for the first time, I hope you have that idea with you, that even in such a simple little scene of two old men staring at each other, what really boils down to an extra octogenarian staring match, there are these ideas communicated of beauty and of hope and of facing apathy and despair, and how we fight against the darkness, right? How we rage against the dying of the light. Unrelated theme. But those are some of the reasons that I love the story most. It's that I can read a paragraph or two and be struck with this idea, this scene that's stuck in my head for years. So, as you go out into the world that seems especially scary these days, I hope that you're able to carry that hope with you. That you don't let the shadow consume you like Denethor did, but instead, like Gandalf, you simply do what you can as you can. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time to watch and enjoy this, hopefully. Please do leave a comment if there's anything I said egregiously crazy that you totally disagree with, or I guess also if you liked it, would be nice to hear. There's more videos coming. There's short films, longer video essays, and more of the short form content, kind of like this. I say short, I don't know how long this is yet, but probably around 10 minutes. So thank you for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on this, and I look forward to creating more videos talking about the stories I love and what they mean to me with all of you.